What would you do if the man who broke your heart walked back into your life this time as your boss? With a 5-year-old boy who calls him dad, Emma thought she had moved on. She built a career, a quiet life, and a fortress around her. Heart, but everything changes at 9 a.m. sharp. When the new CEO steps into the boardroom, and he's the man who vanished without a word 7 years ago. But the real twist? The boy clinging to his hand isn't even his. This is not just a love story. It's a story about healing, second chances, and the unexpected ways that kindness finds its way home. If stories about redemption, it's quiet courage, and the magic of starting, Overspeak to your heart, take a moment to subscribe. It helps us share more stories like this, stories that remind us it's never too late to love again. Now, let's begin. Single dad shows up as her CEO. She doesn't know the boy isn't even his. Asterisk, Emma Carlisle's mornings were always the same, intentionally so. Her world ran on order, on checklists, and coffee poured into the same Navy thermos she'd owned for nearly a decade. She found comfort in the rhythm, the predictability, especially now as the company braced for another wave of restructuring. By 8:50 a.m., she was at her desk in the marketing department on the 15th floor, hair neatly pinned, soft blazer pressed. Mind rehearsing the pitches for the upcoming product relaunch. But something felt ... off. A hushed buzz was traveling through the floor. People were unusually alert, eyes darting to the elevators, whispers crossing cubicles like wildfire. Is that him? She heard one of the interns gasp near the printer. That's the new CEO. He's younger than I expected, someone else murmured. Emma rolled her eyes and tapped her pen. She didn't care who corporate sent to fill the revolving door. Upstairs, her only concern was survival, keeping her team intact and meeting Q4 goals. She picked up her thermos and stood to head to the executive briefing. Held exactly at 9 a.m. in the conference room no one liked. As she approached the glass doors, she heard the room grow unusually quiet. Not the hush of anticipation, but something heavier. Emma walked in, and then time stopped. He was standing at the head of the table. Tall, well-groomed, a little older, but unmistakably him. Daniel Whitaker, the man she had once planned to marry. The man who had vanished from her life without a word, and now, apparently, her boss. Emma froze, heart pounding like it was trying to escape her chest. She hoped no one noticed the way her breath caught, or how she clenched the folder in her hand a little too tightly. Daniel's eyes met hers, and there it was. That same stillness she remembered. Those ocean-gray eyes that once studied her like she was poetry. Now they held something else. Regret, maybe. Or something even heavier. Good morning, he began, voice even and calm. I'm Daniel Whitaker. As of today, I'll be stepping in as interim CEO during the leadership transition. I'm looking forward to working closely with each of you. 8. Word landed like a hammer against Emma's carefully built wall. She sat down slowly, deliberately avoiding his gaze. She wouldn't let this unravel her. Not here. Not now. And just when she thought she'd regained her composure, a small voice echoed from the hallway. Daddy, wait. All heads turned. A little boy, no older than 5, dashed into the room, cheeks flushed, dark curls bouncing as he clutched a toy dinosaur in one hand. He stopped at Daniel's side, panting slightly. I forgot Rexy, he said, holding up the toy proudly. Daniel knelt, ruffled the boy's hair gently.
Thanks, buddy.
I need him to help me with meetings, don't. A soft wave of laughter passed around the table. Emma, however, sat frozen. The boy looked like a painting from her past, same eyes, same dimples, her stomach twisted. Daniel rose, one hand still resting protectively on the boy's shoulder. Everyone, this is Leo, my son. Emma's chest tightened. His son. Had a child, a life, a family. In some distant part of her mind, a voice whispered, of course he moved on. Of course he has a son. Leo's eyes scanned the room, bright and curious. Then, without hesitation, he pointed at Emma and said loudly, she looks like the princess in my book. The room burst into chuckles. Even Emma couldn't help a faint smile. Daniel looked startled for a second, then a softness crossed his face. I think you're right, he said gently. The assistant quickly came in to take Leo to the office daycare. The boy waved at everyone but lingered just a moment longer to beam at Emma before leaving. As soon as the door closed behind him, Daniel cleared his throat. Apologies for the interruption, he said. Let's get started. But the meeting was a blur for Emma. Words floated around, restructuring, projections, investor sentiment, but none of it registered. Her mind was stuck in a loop, replaying 1,000 unanswered questions. Why had he left? Why now? Why here? When the meeting finally adjourned, Emma was the last to rise. She gathered her papers slowly, hoping to escape unnoticed. Emma. His voice stopped her. She turned around, composed but cool. Yes, Mr. Whitaker. A flicker of pain crossed his face at the formality. We should talk, he said softly. When you're ready? She met his gaze. Her voice was even. I'm not sure I ever will be. And with that, she turned and walked out, spine straight. Steps measured, completely unaware of the little drawing Leo had slipped into her folder. A stick figure man, stick figure woman, and a smiling boy holding both their hands. It's underneath in crooked handwriting, my family. Emma had weathered hurricanes of all kinds aggressive clients. Budget cuts, boardroom betrayals, but nothing quite prepared her for the quiet tempest. Unraveling inside her since 9 a.m., her stilettos clicked sharply against the tile as she strode back to her office, jaw clenched, knuckles white from gripping her folder. It wasn't just that Daniel was back, it was the ease of it. The way he entered that room like he hadn't vanished 7 years ago. Like he hadn't walked away from everything they had built together, leaving nothing but an unsigned lease agreement for an apartment they never moved into, and a voicemail that simply said, I'm sorry. She slammed the door shut behind her, a little too forcefully. The folder slipped from her hand, spilling its contents across her desk. Among the printouts and charts, one piece stood out. Thicker paper.
Crayon colors.
A child's drawing? Her breath caught. 3 stick figures, one tall man. One woman in a blue dress, and a smaller figure in the middle holding their hands. Above it, a crude sun and a blue sky. And underneath, written in a child's careful scrawl, my family. Emma stared at the drawing for a long time. How had Leo, his son, even known her well enough to draw that? She remembered his wide-eyed smile, the innocence in his voice when he called her a princess. Part of her wanted to laugh at the absurdity. Another part, the part that used to believe in fate and love stories and serendipity, felt an ache so deep she had to sit down. There was a knock at her door. Not a timid one. Emma didn't need to look up to know who it was. I'm not ready to talk, she said flatly. The door creaked open anyway, I figured. Daniel replied quietly, stepping inside. She glanced up sharply. Then why are you? Here he walked in slowly, hands tucked into the pockets of his tailored slacks. Because I didn't come back to hide anymore? Emma stood, shoulders tense. You think you can just show up after 7 years, take the top office, and act like none of it happened? No, he said gently. I don't. Good, she snapped. Because it did happen, Daniel. You left me. You didn't just disappear from a relationship, you disappeared from a life we were building. You disappeared from me. His expression didn't flinch. If anything, he looked tired, but not weak. There was a weight in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Something more than regret, like he had carried the silence for far too long. I left because my brother died, he said, voice tight. It was sudden. Car accident. His wife couldn't cope. She left Leo on my doorstep 2 days later. I wasn't equipped for any of it. I panicked. I broke things I didn't know how to fix. Emma blinked. Leo, he's not yours.
What?
My nephew, Daniel said. But he's been calling me Dad since he was old enough to speak. I never corrected him. It felt wrong to take away the one thing that gave him stability. Emma sat down slowly, her emotions turning in unpredictable currents. You could have told me, she whispered. I should have, he said. But I thought I was saving you. You didn't sign up to raise a child. I barely signed up for it. I was a mess. I didn't want to bring you into that storm, so you vanished instead. Didn't respond. He didn't have to. Silence hung between them. sharp and unfinished. Then Daniel took a cautious step closer. I came back because I owe you the truth. Not just because of work, not just because of Leo, because I never stopped loving you, Emma. I just forgot how to be the man you deserved. Ah! Emma exhaled slowly. Her heart told her to let the words wash over her like a bomb. But her mind was still building walls. I don't know what you want from me, she said honestly. Nothing, he replied. Just your time, whatever that means. For Leo, too. He likes you, you know. He doesn't even know me. Daniel smiled faintly. Kids know hearts faster than grown-ups do. Emma let out a bitter chuckle. Well, then he's got me all wrong. He doesn't, Daniel said softly. Neither do I. She looked up at him then, and for the first time since that morning, really looked. He was different. Older, yes, but steadier. More grounded. There were faint lines around his eyes, the kind drawn not from laughter, but from responsibility. He wasn't the boy who left. He was a man who had carried burdens she hadn't seen, maybe couldn't have understood back then. Still, his understanding didn't erase the hurt. I need time, she said finally. I'll wait, Daniel said. His voice calm and sure. I waited 7 years. I can wait longer. And then he left quietly, respectfully. Emma sat alone again, fingers brushing over the drawing Leo had made. The colors looked brighter now somehow. Maybe she was just seeing them differently. Later that day, as Emma left the building, she noticed a small figure sitting near the reception desk. Curly hair, feet swinging above the floor, nose buried. In a book, Leo. He looked up and beamed. Miss Emma. She smiled in spite of herself. Hi there. Leo held up his book. Do you know what velociraptors eat? She blinked. Smaller dinosaurs. He nodded sagely. But not people. Not if you're nice to them. Emma laughed a real laugh this time. Leo stood, walked over and held out a tiny hand. You want to walk with me until Daddy finishes his call? She hesitated only a second before taking it. As they walked together under the soft glow of the lobby lights, she didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time in a long while, she was willing to find out. The office had its own rhythm after hours, quiet hums of printers cooling down, the echo of heels against tile, and the occasional laugh from someone staying late. Emma liked that rhythm. It felt like the city exhaled when the fluorescent buzz dimmed. But tonight, she wasn't working late out of choice. She couldn't concentrate, couldn't stop replaying Daniel's words, or Leo's drawing, or the weight in Daniel's voice when he said, I never stopped loving you. That one had landed like a stone in her chest. Emma rubbed her temples, staring at the same marketing. Brief for the third time. The numbers swam in front of her. She needed air, coffee, distraction. She stepped out of her office and made her way to the employee lounge. The lights were dimmed, and the city twinkled through the floor to ceiling. Windows like a sea of possibilities she wasn't ready to sail. The lounge was supposed to be empty. Instead, there he was. Leo, sitting on the couch, his legs swinging, a juice box in hand and a stuffed dinosaur tucked under his arm. He looked up when she entered and lit up. Miss Emma. Emma smiled despite herself.
Hi! What are you
doing here so late? Daddy's still in a call with the lawyer man, Leo said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. They said I could sit here and wait. Emma glanced around. A nearby security guard nodded at her, clearly keeping an eye on the boy. But Leo wasn't bothered. He was too busy carefully lining up for crayons in a row on the coffee table. You staying late too? He asked, sipping his juice. Emma sat down across from him. Yeah, had some things to finish. Leo nodded wisely. Grown-up stuff, she chuckled. Something like that. He looked at her intently. You look sad today. Are you mad at my daddy? The question hit harder than she expected. Emma inhaled, then chose her words. I used to know your dad a long time ago. And then I didn't, and now he's back. It's a little confusing. Leo nodded again. Like when you go to a new school and don't know anybody, but then you see someone who looks kind and you think, maybe they could be my friend. Emma blinked. This child had the soul of a philosopher. Exactly like that. she said softly. Leo turned back to his crayons and began drawing something with the intense focus only 5-year-olds have. Emma
Watched him for a moment before asking.
Do you like dinosaurs a lot? He lit up. Yes. This one's name is Rexy. He held up the well-loved plush dinosaur. He's brave and likes to protect people. Is he your favorite? Nope. My favorite is this one. He flipped the paper around to show her. It was another drawing. This one was cruder than the last, but unmistakable. It was Emma, in her blue blazer, standing next to Leo and Rexy. They were all smiling. You drew me again, she said, touched Leo. Nodded. Daddy said you're very smart and pretty. Think he likes you. Emma's eyebrows rose. Did he tell you that? Not in words, but I know. He gave a little shrug. I think you'd be a good mom, you listen. You smile with your eyes, and you don't talk to me like I'm a baby. Emma felt something shift in her chest and ache, warm and unfamiliar. Leo, she began, unsure of what to say. But he stood suddenly and handed her the drawing. You can have this one, for your fridge. Emma took it gently, her voice quiet. Thank you. You're welcome, he said, yawning and flopping back onto the couch. Just then, the lounge door opened and Daniel stepped in. He looked tired, but smiled when he saw them. Hey, he said, I see you've met my assistant. Emma stood. We were just talking. He's very charming. Dangerously so, Daniel replied, ruffling Leo's hair. Leo beamed. I gave her the fridge one. Daniel looked at the drawing, then at Emma. That's his highest honor, you know. Emma smiled, honored. There was a brief silence. A comfortable one this time. I'll walk you out, Daniel offered. Emma hesitated, then nodded. Okay. They rode the elevator in silence. Leo nestled between them, nodding off on his father's arm. The city stretched below them in shimmering streaks of gold and blue. He's amazing, Emma said finally. Daniel glanced at his son and smiled. He saved me. Emma looked at him, surprised by the raw honesty. I was spiraling after Ben died, he continued. I didn't know how to process it. I didn't know how to be a father. I still don't some days. But Leo, he taught me how to stay still, how to care about something bigger than myself again. Emma said nothing, because there was nothing to add to something so true when they reached the lobby. Daniel shifted Leo in his arms. The boy murmured something in his sleep and clutched Rexy tighter. I'm sorry for springing all this on you, Daniel said quietly. I didn't expect to be assigned to this branch, and I sure didn't expect you. Emma met his gaze, searching. I didn't expect you either, or Leo, or any of this. Daniel nodded. But you're still here. She smiled faintly for now. He smiled back. I'll take that. They stood there for another heartbeat too. People suspended between the past and whatever came next. Emma looked down at the drawing in her hand, then back at the boy asleep in his father's arms. Maybe, just maybe, second chances didn't always come in the form you expected. Sometimes they came with crayons, dinosaurs, and the quiet hope of a child who simply wanted a family. Mondays were for battles. Everyone in the office knew that. It was the day reports were reviewed, projections scrutinized, and patience worn thin. But this Monday felt sharper, like everyone was walking across glass barefoot, pretending they weren't bleeding. Emma adjusted her blouse in the reflection of the elevator's steel door. Her fingers trembled slightly as she pushed a strand of hair behind her ear. She wasn't nervous about the quarterly review. She had the numbers. Her team had over-delivered. What unsettled her was that she'd have to deliver those numbers. To a boardroom where Daniel sat at the head of the table, the elevator doors opened. She walked into the main conference room, calm mask intact. The room buzzed with low conversation until Daniel entered, carrying a portfolio and mercifully not accompanied by Leo this time. Their eyes met briefly. He gave her a small, respectful nod. She returned it without emotion. It was easier. That way the presentation began. Emma stood at the front, steady as ever. Slide after slide, she detailed market shifts, campaign ROI, new brand awareness benchmarks. She could feel some resistance from the older board members, especially Whitford. The head of strategic partnerships, a man who had never masked his skepticism toward female department heads. When Emma finished, she took a breath. That concludes the Q3 performance summary. I'm happy to take questions. Whitford leaned forward, arms crossed. Miss Carlyle, your projections for Q4 look optimistic. Are we supposed to believe this uptick in engagement isn't an outlier? Emma didn't blink. The growth correlates directly with the changes we implemented after the second quarter. Paid conversions are tracking consistently upward, not sporadically. If you'd like to see the month-to-month attribution breakdown, I'd like to know how much of this is attributed to your department's actual strategy, Whitford interrupted, and how much is a market coincidence. No offense, but we've seen temporary gains before. Emma opened her mouth, the heat of frustration rising in her throat. But Daniel spoke first. Emma's projections are conservative, actually, he said smoothly. I reviewed the full report this morning. Her team not only hit every metric, they created a model that accounts for seasonality and margin thresholds. It's one of the more forward-thinking plans I've seen in years. The room stilled. Daniel looked around, unless someone else here would like to take responsibility for that level of insight. Silence. Emma kept her expression neutral, but her heart thudded in her chest. She'd been defending herself in that room for years, but no one had ever defended her like that. After the meeting adjourned, people filtered out quickly. Kama packed her laptop quietly. She didn't look up until she sensed someone approaching. Daniel, of course. He stood by the conference table, his expression unreadable. I meant what I said in there, not just for the politics. Emma closed her laptop with a soft snap. You didn't need to speak for me? I didn't speak for you. I backed you. There's a difference. She raised an eyebrow. I've been holding my ground in that room long before you returned. Daniel nodded. I know. That's why I'm here. Emma crossed her arms. Are you? His smile was faint. You don't make it easy. I'm not supposed to. She replied, You left, Daniel, and I had to build something from what was left behind. I can't just fall back into whatever this is because you walked into a meeting with a child and a smile. He took a step closer, but kept his distance. I don't want you to fall back into anything. I want to earn something new. If that means starting at zero with you, I'll do it. Emma held his gaze, her voice low. Zero would be a mercy. You left me at -10. Daniel didn't flinch. Then I'll start there. It was, again, that quiet conviction. It wasn't flashy or loud, but it carried weight. Like someone who had carried a child through sleepless nights, who had sacrificed ego for survival, who had learned the art of stillness through necessity. Emma wasn't ready to forgive, but she wasn't ready to close the door either. Leo, she said after a pause. He's exceptional. Daniel smiled, something warm softening his features. He gets that from his mother. Emma blinked. Daniel's smile faded just a little. Not his birth mother. She left when he was barely 6 months old. I meant my mother. She raised Ben and me with a kind of strength that didn't shout, just endured. I try to channel her. I fail a lot. There was a silence, not awkward, just full. Emma shifted slightly, her tone gentler now. Why did you really come back? He hesitated. I wanted stability for Leo, and stop running. I spent years avoiding every place that reminded me of what I lost. But Leo deserves to see someone who doesn't run from his past. Emma looked at him then, not the man who left, but the man who returned. Maybe the difference mattered. That evening, Emma returned to her apartment, exhausted. She set her bag down, kicked off her shoes, and sat on the couch. Letting the stillness settle around her, her phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. Hi, it's Daniel. I hope it's okay I saved your number from the staff contact sheet. I just wanted to say thank you for not walking out of the room today. Leo asked if you liked his drawing. I told him you kept it. That made his whole evening. Emma stared at the message for a long time. She looked over at her fridge. The crayon drawing was pinned there with a tiny magnet shaped like a coffee cup. She picked up her phone and typed, Slowly tell Leo I hung it. In the most important room in the house, she hit send. Then she set the phone down and leaned back, eyes closed. The storm wasn't over. But maybe, just maybe, it had shifted course. It started with a knock on her office door, not the usual knuckle rap of assistants or team members, but softer, rhythmic. Emma looked up from her laptop. "Come in." The door creaked open, and there he was, Leo, clutching Rexy in one arm and a folded paper in the other. His curls were a little messier than usual, his socks mismatched. He stepped in with the confidence of someone who believed he belonged everywhere. "Hi," he said, peeking around her desk. "Daddy's in a super long meeting with the coffee guy." Emma blinked, amused. "The coffee guy." "Yeah, Leo," said seriously, climbing up into one of the guest chairs like it was a throne. "The man who makes people talk about boring stuff while drinking grown-up coffee?" Emma laughed softly. "You mean the procurement director?" Leo nodded. "That's him." She closed her laptop halfway. "How did you escape the daycare again?" He grinned. "They were watching a movie I've seen twice. Said I could draw quietly if I stayed out of trouble, so I drew. This." He handed her the paper. Another drawing. This one had more detail in what appeared to be a Cape Rexy perched on her shoulder, and Leo standing beside her, grinning up at her like she had just defeated a monster. "You made me a superhero?" she asked, touched. "You already are," he said simply. "Daddy said you fix problems and make people listen, and you wear blue like Superman." Emma felt her throat tighten unexpectedly. "Thank you, Leo. I'm honored." He swung his legs. "Under the chair? Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Are you mad at my daddy?" The question wasn't simple. Not anymore. Not after everything she'd learned. But Leo's eyes were so open, so trusting that she had to answer. Was, for a long time. Leo nodded, absorbing that with a maturity beyond his years. "I think he was sad. Before, he used to look at pictures of someone and get quiet." Emma's heart skipped. "Pictures of who?" Leo shrugged. "I don't know, a girl in a blue dress, I think. You looked like her." Emma exhaled slowly. "He never told you?" "No, but I think it was someone he loved." She gave him a faint smile. "Maybe it was." Leo tilted his head. "Do you still love him?" Emma's heart did a small stunned somersault. She hadn't expected that. Not from him. She hesitated. "That's a complicated question." Leo leaned forward. "Grown-ups always say that when they don't want to say yes." Emma laughed despite herself. "You're very wise." He smiled proudly, then said, almost shyly, "If you still love him, would you be my mom?" Emma froze. Leo didn't seem to notice. He looked down at his dinosaur, patting it like it was part of the conversation. "I don't remember my real mom. Daddy says she had to go away. Sometimes I think maybe she just didn't find the right door back." Emma swallowed hard, the weight of his words anchoring something deep inside her. She reached across the desk, placing her hand over his. "Leo, I'm really glad you came to talk to me." He looked up and grinned. "You make Daddy happy, I can tell. He smiles different when he sees you. Not the good morning team smile. The real one." Emma's chest ached. She had been building walls for so long, stone by stone, memory by memory. But this boy, with his honest eyes and fearless hope, was climbing over them like they were nothing. There was a knock on the door this time, heavier, more familiar. "Daniel," he entered. Brows raised in apology. "I'm so sorry. He vanished from daycare again." Leo jumped down and ran to him. "I gave her the superhero one." Daniel looked at Emma, embarrassed. "You really don't have to entertain him." "I don't mind," she said quietly. "There." Eyes held for a beat too long. Leo tugged on his dad's sleeve. "Daddy," I asked her. Daniel frowned. "Asked her what?" Leo beamed. "If she wants to be my mom?" The silence that followed was enormous. Daniel's expression changed part. Stunned, part horrified. "Leo, it's okay," Emma said gently. She knelt to Leo's height. "That's a really special question, and I promise I'll think about it carefully. Can I do that?" Leo nodded solemnly. "Okay, but don't take too long. Have a birthday wish list. and I need to know who to give it to. Daniel looked like he might pass out. I'll walk him back, he murmured. Emma stood, still reeling. Daniel. He paused, Leo's hand in his. I didn't put him up to that, he said softly. He just says things, big things, with no filter. I know, she said, her voice catching. That's what makes him so dangerous. Daniel gave her a helpless smile. When they left, Emma sat down slowly, her hands trembling around the edges of the drawing. This child, this beautiful, unfiltered child, had managed to say aloud the very things she'd buried beneath layers of logic. In scar tissue, did she still love Daniel? Maybe she had never stopped, but it wasn't just about her anymore. It was about a boy who believed in capes and second chances, who drew stick-figure dreams and left them like breadcrumbs on the trail of her healing. That night, Emma walked into her apartment and, without thinking, pinned the new drawing next to the old one. Her fridge now held 2 windows into Leo's world. Into her world, maybe. Then her phone lit up with a message. Daniel, he talks about you like you've always been there. I know that's not fair, but it's honest. Thank you for being kind. For seeing him, she stared at the screen for a long time, heart pounding. Then finally she replied, maybe some superheroes don't wear capes. Maybe they wear blazers and heels and walk straight into storms without flinching. There was no response, but she didn't need one. Because for the first time in years, Emma felt like maybe, just maybe, she was becoming someone a child could believe in. The invitation came on a Thursday, tucked into her inbox between supplier updates and expense approvals. Subject, Project Strategy Sync Off-Site Location from Daniel Whitaker. Location, 1707 Crescent View Lane. Note, relaxed setting, bring your brain and your questions. Dinner provided. Emma stared at it for a long moment. She wasn't sure if it was a test of professionalism or a trap for vulnerability. Probably both. Still, she clicked accept. It was just business, a strategy meeting, the CEO's house with food. Simple, she wore a tailored navy sweater and dark jeans. Professional, but not cold. She told herself it didn't matter what Daniel thought of how she looked. But she still checked the mirror twice before heading out. Crescent View Lane curved up into the hills where the street lamps were soft, and the houses had yards full of storybook trees. His house stood quietly at the end, a modest 2-story with a wide porch and an old swing swaying gently in the breeze. Daniel opened the door before she knocked. You're early, he said, smiling, one hand braced against the doorframe. He looked comfortably casual in a gray Henley jeans, barefoot, as if this were the most normal thing in the world. You said bring my brain, Emma replied. It likes to be punctual. He stepped aside to let her in. The house smelled like rosemary and something baking homey, grounded, startled her. She had imagined sterile modernism, but this was lived-in warmth. You have a beautiful place, she said. It's mostly Leo's kingdom, Daniel replied. I just pay the mortgage. She followed him into the dining area where papers, printouts, and post-its were spread across the table in organized chaos. A lasagna dish steamed gently near the center. He's with my neighbor tonight, Daniel added, catching her glance around. She's a retired teacher. She lets him help her water plants and talk her ear off about dinosaurs. Emma smiled. Sounds like a good arrangement. They dove into work quickly, falling into the old rhythm they used to have, interrupting, building off each other's ideas, disagreeing without ego. For a while, it felt like they were just Emma and Daniel again, before everything splintered. But then, during a break, she excused herself to the kitchen to refill her water. That's when she saw it. A framed photo on the fridge. Not one that was meant to be noticed. It was small, tucked behind a drawing of a rocket ship, probably Leo's. But Emma's eyes caught it mid-glance, and her breath stopped. It was Daniel. And a man who looked just like him, but broader, stockier. His brother, no doubt. The two stood beside a hospital crib, looking down at a sleeping baby. Leo. Emma could tell by the wisps of black curls, but the mother there was no mother in. The frame, only Daniel's hand cradling the baby's head. Emma stared, frozen. The intimacy of the photo, the absence, the story it whispered through silence. "You found Ben?" Daniel's voice came softly behind her. She turned, startled. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. It's okay." We stepped forward slowly. "That photo means more to me than anything in this house." She looked at it again, more carefully now. "You raised him from the start?" she asked. Daniel nodded. "Ben died 2 weeks after that photo. Hit and run, driver never stopped," he exhaled. "Leo was just 3 months old." His mother unraveled. "She tried for a while. Then one day she dropped him off with me and said she couldn't do it anymore." His heart clenched. "You didn't tell me?" "I didn't tell anyone," Daniel said. "Not at first. I didn't want the sympathy. And I was scared. Terrified, actually. I didn't know how to be a father, Emma. I barely knew how to be me." Emma turned to face him. "But you did it. I had to. He had no one else." There was a silence between them now, not of avoidance. But Reverend Emma reached out and gently adjusted the corner of the photo, straightening it on the fridge. "You didn't just raise him, Daniel. You gave him a world where he feels safe enough to draw me in it." Daniel looked at her with a softness that unraveled her defenses like thread. "I didn't expect you to ever be part of that world again," he said. "But when Leo met you, it was like something opened in him, something I didn't realize he was missing." Emma shook her head gently. "You can't put that on me." "I'm not," he said. "But he sees something in you. I'd be lying if I said I didn't see it too." Emma turned back to the kitchen window. The porch swing moved slightly in the wind, casting shadows against the wall like two people dancing slowly in the dark. "I've built a life on not needing anyone," she admitted, and I was proud of that. "But lately, I'm starting to wonder if I've mistaken walls for strength." Daniel moved beside her, close enough to feel the warmth of his presence without touching. "We all build walls," he said. "Sometimes. For good reasons. But maybe the bravest thing isn't staying behind the mitts, letting someone walk through the gate." She looked up at him then, really looked. There was weariness in his eyes, yes, but also light. And patience. And something rare, hope without pressure. "I'm not promising anything," she said. "I'm not asking for promises," he replied. "Just time and honesty." Emma considered it. The quiet truth of his home, the child who called her a superhero. The man who, despite everything, came back. She nodded. "And we'll start with dinner." Daniel smiled. And it wasn't the polished smile of a CEO, it was the real one, the one Leo must have inherited. They sat down. For the first time in 7 years, shared a meal not built on memories, but on something entirely new, not past perfect, not future conditional, just present tense. Emma hadn't expected the past to feel so soft. After dinner at Daniel's house, she found herself walking slower when passing Leo's crayon-covered refrigerator drawings, lingering longer over old memories now wrapped in new meaning. There had always been a weight between her and Daniela's silence that held too many questions. But now, it was as if the silence had been cracked open by a child's innocence and the quiet courage of a man who had stopped running. Still, truth. It was a fragile thing, and even when it was spoken out loud, it didn't erase what had been left unsaid for so long. It was Saturday afternoon, and Emma was at a local bookstore, the kind with creaky floors and shelves that smelled like cedar and time. She browsed the children's section with slow fingers, thinking of Leo's dinosaur obsession. She'd picked out a beautifully illustrated book called Leo, the Kind-Hearted Raptor. The coincidence in title made her smile. As she turned toward the checkout, her phone buzzed. "Daniel, want to meet us at Harper's Park in 30 minutes? Leo insists on showing you his new lava slide trick. Warning, it's completely unsafe and will terrify you." Emma stared at the message for a moment, her smile lingering. "Be there in 20. I want a head start on surviving the terror." The park was crowded, humming with weekend laughter and warm light. Children darted between swings and jungle gyms, while parents clustered under shaded benches with coffee and tired smiles. Emma spotted them near the slides. Leo ran toward her at full speed, wearing a cape made from a checkered dish towel and a determined grin. "You came." She knelt just in time to catch him. "Of course I came. I couldn't miss the lava slide." He took her hand with all the trust in the world and dragged her toward a plastic structure painted in bright primary colors. Watch. I'm going to slide down backwards and land like a superhero. Daniel stood nearby, hands in pockets, his eyes tracking Leo's every wild move with a mixture of amusement and fatherly anxiety. He said softly as she approached. "Hey yourself," she replied. They stood side by side for a moment, not speaking, just watching Leo climb the platform, his cape fluttering in the breeze. "He's fearless," Emma said. Daniel chuckled. "He also thinks gravity is a myth." Emma smiled, but then grew quiet. She looked at Daniel, her voice gentler. "You didn't just lose your brother, did you?" Daniel turned his head toward her slowly. "No," he said. "I lost myself." "Too," Emma nodded, expecting that. "What broke you the most?" she asked, not out of accusation, but genuine curiosity. Daniel inhaled slowly, I think. It was realizing that love didn't save him. Ben had a family, a future, a son. It still ended in a blink. "After that, I kept wondering, what if I built something again and lost it too?" He paused, eyes still on Leo. "I convinced myself that pushing people away was protection. For them, for me." Emma's heart tightened. "I tried to forget you," he continued. "I tried for a long time. Grief doesn't replace love, it just buries it for a while. And when Leo started asking questions about moms, about families, I kept seeing your face. Every time he drew a woman holding his hand, it looked like you, even before he met you." Emma swallowed the lump in her throat. "I thought I was broken when you left, but I wasn't. I was grieving someone who was still alive." Daniel turned to her then. "I know I don't deserve a second chance, but I'm asking for one anyway." She looked at him, really looked. He wasn't the polished man she remembered from years ago. He was something more weathered, more real. And in the cracks of him there was room for truth. "You're not asking just for you," she said quietly. "You're asking for him too." Daniel nodded once. "He already chose you, just hoping you might eventually choose us." Leo barreled down the slide at that moment, screaming triumphantly, his dish towel cape flapping behind him. He landed in the mulch, stood up, threw his arms in the air, and shouted, "Did you see that, Miss Emma? I didn't even break my leg." Emma burst out laughing. "It's very impressive." Daniel shook his head with a mock grimace. "This is how I age 10 years every weekend." "Worth it," she replied softly. Leo ran over and tugged on Emma's hand. "Will you come to my school fair next weekend? Daddy said he has a meeting, but I told him meetings can wait because cotton candy is more important." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "I said no such thing." Leo folded his arms. "You thought it?" Emma looked down at him. "I'd love to come." Leo grinned. "Then it's a date." He darted off again, leaving the two adults suspended in a quiet warmth. Daniel exhaled. "He doesn't realize what he's doing, you know?" Emma turned to him. "And what's that?" "He's healing me in places I didn't know were broken." Her heart ached at the tenderness of it. "I think," she said slowly, "he's doing the same for me." They stood there for a moment, watching the boy in the cape climb the ladder once more. The past was still there between them, behind them, but it didn't feel like a wall anymore. It felt like something to learn from, something they could walk beside, not carry on their backs. Emma reached into her bag and handed Daniel the book she'd bought earlier. He looked at the title and smiled. "Leo, the Kind-Hearted Raptor." "I figured it suited him," she said. "It suits all of us," Daniel replied. "Kindness in the face of extinction," she laughed. "That's very philosophical." "I read too much after midnight," he replied. They both turned toward the playground, where Leo stood at the top of the slide again, shouting, "Look at me, Daddy. Look at me, Miss Emma." Together they did. The first time Emma ever spoke about her mother's death, she was 12 years old, sitting on a metal bench outside the principal's office after punching a boy in the hallway. The boy had said something cruel about sick people, about hospitals, and something inside her had snapped. That day, she learned there were some things she didn't know how to say, even when they lived under her skin like splinters. She learned how to build walls, how to hold herself together with silence. She never expected that one day she'd talk about her mother again, not with a therapist, not with Daniel, and certainly not with a 5-year-old wearing pajamas and a glow-in-the-dark sticker on his cheek. But here she was, sitting cross-legged on the floor of Daniel's living room on a quiet Thursday night while Leo built a city out of foam blocks and plastic dinosaurs. She had stopped by to drop off a campaign packet for Daniel. She didn't plan to stay. And yet one story, one question, one smile from Leo had somehow turned minutes into an hour. "You don't have a mom either?" Leo asked, placing a tiny toy tree beside a T-Rex. Emma paused. The question was so innocent, so matter-of-fact. "No," she said softly. "She died when I was your age." Leo looked up. "Was she sick?" Emma nodded. "Very." Leo thought for a second, then asked, "Were you sad for a long time?" She swallowed, her voice gentle. "Yes, for a long time." Leo didn't press. He just scooted closer to her on the rug and placed Rexy in her lap. "He helps when I feel sad," he said. "You can borrow him." Emma blinked hard, her throat tightening. She picked up the small dinosaur, its green felt tail worn from years of holding. "Thank you, Leo. That's very generous." He shrugged. "You're my friend." Daniel stood in the kitchen, watching from a polite distance as he finished washing dinner dishes. His hands were still wet, a towel draped over his shoulder, but his attention was fully on them and the woman sitting on his floor with his son, the look in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Later, after Leo was tucked in after, he'd insisted Emma read him one bedtime story, and Daniel quietly handed her the book as if it were always meant to be hers. They sat on the back porch with mugs of herbal tea and the kind of silence that no longer felt empty. "He gave you Rexy," Daniel said finally. "That's new." Emma cradled the little dinosaur in her hands. "He said I could borrow him." Daniel's gaze was steady. It's his version of trust. Emma nodded, her voice quieter. "He asked me about my mom." Daniel didn't speak right away. Then he said, "Did you tell him the truth?" "I did," she replied. "I didn't plan to. It just came out." He leaned back, exhaling. "Has a way of doing that to people?" Emma smiled faintly. "You ever talked to him about his own mother?"
Act.
Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. "Only in pieces. He knows she left. He knows it wasn't his fault. But he still asks, sometimes. Not directly. More like questions about moms in general. Why some stay. Why some don't." Emma looked down at the mug in her lap, her voice gentle. "What do you say?" "I tell him the truth I wish someone told me when I was a kid," Daniel said. "That people are complicated. That sometimes they break and they don't know how to fix themselves. And when they can't fix themselves, they run." Emma glanced at him. "Did you run too?" He met her eyes. "I did, and I hated myself for it." The silence settled again, but this time it felt like an understanding. Emma sipped her tea, then whispered, "After my mom died, I stopped talking. Not completely, just I stopped talking about her. I thought if I didn't say her name, I wouldn't feel it." Daniel watched her carefully, giving her room. "My dad tried," she continued, "but he was a fixer. And grief isn't something you fix. It's something you carry. And I didn't know how to carry it back then, so I buried it." "Daniels." The voice was soft. "How long?" Emma let out a breath. "Still working on it." He nodded, thoughtful. "You've been strong for a long time." "Too long, maybe," she admitted. Then, in a voice almost too quiet to hear, she added, "And maybe I don't want to be that strong anymore." Daniel reached out, not touching her hand, just resting his fingers near hers on the bench between them. "You don't have to be," he said. "Not all the time." Emma looked at him. For the first time since he came back, she saw not the boy who left her, but the man who had lost everything and rebuilt something beautiful. Not perfect, but real. And she realized something else. Healing didn't come all at once. It came in layers, in stories told under moonlight. In the way a child placed a toy in your hand without asking what it meant. "Daniel," she said her, voice trembling a little, "do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't left?" "All the time," he answered. "But I try not to live there." Emma nodded slowly. I think I'm ready to stop living there too. They sat in silence a little longer until Leo's small voice called from upstairs. Daddy, Miss Emma? I forgot to say goodnight to Rexy. Emma smiled. I better go return him. Daniel stood as she did, and when their hands brushed, he didn't pull away, and neither did she. It had started raining sometime around 3 a.m. soft at first. Then steady, drumming against windows like a heartbeat slowed by thought. By the time Emma opened her eyes, the city outside her bedroom window was silver-washed and softened. Buildings, blurred by the hush of falling water, she dressed without checking the weather. The rain didn't bother her. In fact, it felt like the perfect backdrop for what the day might hold. The office was quiet when she arrived early. Daniel had scheduled an emergency meeting at 9:30 a.m. with the design team and executive leads. Something about a critical oversight in the launch visuals. Emma wasn't worried. She had read the brief, seen the numbers, but she could feel tension thickening the air like steam by 9:28 a.m. The conference room was packed, the windows streaked with rain, the projector flickering to life. Daniel stood at the front, sleeves rolled up, his jaw set. As you know. He began, We've received feedback from the client about inconsistencies in our campaign visuals. Specifically, a mismatch between the core brand messaging and the emotional tone of the product rollout. I take responsibility for not catching it sooner. Emma frowned slightly. The tone in his voice was heavier than it needed to be. He clicked the remote, shifting to a slide that showcased side-by-side comparisons of two ad versions. Emma's work was on the left, her original concept. On the right, the final. A version that had somehow been adjusted by someone downstream? Emma, Daniel said, turning to her, can you confirm which version was submitted for production? Emma stood, confident. The version on the left. It was aligned with the brief and approved internally. He nodded. That's what I thought. Then he looked at the room. Someone bypassed protocol and made alterations without approval. I'm not interested in blame. I'm interested in transparency. No? The room was silent. Whitford, as always, shifted uncomfortably. Emma remained standing. I documented every internal review. I can pull the timestamps. Daniel held up a hand. No need. I've already reviewed them. He turned back to the room. I want to be very clear. If we expect our clients to trust us, we need to trust each other. That starts with owning our work and our mistakes. He clicked the remote again, ending the presentation. Then, softer, he added, and sometimes it means admitting that clarity doesn't always come when we want it, when we're willing to see it. Emma's breath caught. She knew instinctively that he wasn't just talking about campaign slides. After the meeting, people scattered quickly, eager to escape the charged atmosphere. Emma stayed behind, organizing her files, pretending not to notice Daniel lingering near the windows. He spoke without turning. You didn't have to stand up for yourself. I already had your back. Emma looked at him. I didn't do it for defense. Did it for the record. He finally turned, a wry smile playing at the corner of his mouth. Always the strategist, always the realist, she corrected. They stood in silence. The rain cascading outside like a soft shield from the rest of the world. Then Daniel said, quietly, Do you remember the last time it rained like this? Looked up. The day you left. He nodded. I couldn't get the words out. I walked into the apartment and saw your shoes by the door, your coffee mug in the sink. I sat on the edge of the bed and knew if I told you the truth, I'd never leave. I thought leaving was the only way to protect you. Emma's voice was tight. You weren't protecting me. You're abandoning me. Daniel stepped forward. I know, and I hate that I made you carry that. Emma felt the weight of his words settle over her not as blame, but as something raw and real. I didn't need you to be perfect, she whispered. I just needed you to stay. His eyes shone with something unspoken. I didn't know how. A long pause. Then Emma said, You still don't, but you're learning. He smiled faintly. You make me want to learn faster. She stepped closer, her voice soft. I'm not the same girl you left. I know, he said. You're stronger, wiser, scarier. She laughed, a light sound that softened the edges between them. And what about you? Are you the same? No, he said without hesitation. I'm messier, more tired. But I'm also more honest. With you. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I found this in Leo's backpack last night, he said, handing it to her. Emma opened it carefully. It was a drawing, of course. This one had 3 figures: a tall man with glasses, a woman with a long blue cape, and a little boy holding a heart-shaped balloon. Above them in bold purple letters, I love my real family. Emma blinked back sudden tears. He doesn't know what we are, Daniel said. He knows what he feels, and I think he's giving us permission to feel it too. Emma looked up at him. Are we a family? I don't know yet, Daniel said, but I'd like to find out, if you'll let me. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped forward, close enough to see the stubble on his jaw, the quiet vulnerability in his eyes. Then she reached out and took his hand. I'm not promising forever. But I'll give you today, he smiled, more with his eyes than his mouth. Then I'll meet you there. Every day. Outside, the rain softened into mist. And for the first time in years, Emma felt like the world wasn't something to brace against, but something to step into. Together, Saturday morning dawned with the golden quiet only weekends knew how to bring. The sky outside Daniel's kitchen was a soft wash of cream and blue, and somewhere down the street, a lawnmower hummed lazily. Still, like the world had paused to let something tender unfold. Emma stood barefoot near the fridge, a cup of coffee warming her hands. Her eyes fixed on the newest drawing Leo had taped up with unsteady scissor-cut star magnets. She hadn't noticed it last night. They'd all returned late from the school fair. Tired but glowing Leo with cotton candy stuck in his curls. Daniel with a sunburn on his neck. And Emma with sore feet from walking hand in hand with a boy who kept shouting, "This is my Emma." She came. The drawing was simple. Crane figures again, but this time with more detail. Daniel in a gray sweater, Emma in a navy dress with tiny yellow dots. Leo in between, arms stretched wide, holding both their hands. Above them, a rainbow. Below them, the words, "My family, forever unless Rexy gets jealous." Emma let out a quiet laugh, tears stinging behind her eyes. It was ridiculous and beautiful in his, all heart and no filter. Like most of Leo's offerings, it said the things adults often see, OULDN, single quotes. Daniel walked in moments later, still barefoot, holding a small stack of Leo's shoes he had insisted on sleeping in his socks and one sneaker last night. He paused when he saw her at the fridge. You found it, he said. Emma nodded, her voice gentle. When did he draw it? Yesterday morning, Daniel replied. He said he wanted it to be a surprise when you woke up. She stared at the drawing again. He's certain, isn't he? Daniel came up beside her, close enough for their shoulders to brush. Leo doesn't know how to be uncertain. He only knows how to love out loud. Emma turned to him slowly. And what about you? Daniel looked at her not like a man waiting for permission, but like someone ready to show. Up with both hands open. I used to think love was something you protected, he said. Something you kept safe, behind rules and timelines. But now, I think, real love shows up. It holds space. It lets people heal and choose and come home when they're ready. Emma's throat tightened. And what if I'm still healing? Daniel smiled softly. Then I'll make room for that too. They stood in silence, the kitchen filled with warmth that had nothing to do with the coffee or the sunlight. Just 2 people learning to breathe in each other's presence again. Leo thundered down the stairs a moment later. He was already dressed in his favorite dinosaur t-shirt and mismatched socks. He stopped when he saw them at the fridge. You found my secret drawing, he said, grinning. Emma crouched down and held out her arms. I did, and it's my favorite one yet. Leo ran into her embrace without hesitation. I made it for our fridge. It's our real fridge because you live here now, right? Blinked eye. What? Daniel cleared his throat behind her. We haven't exactly had that conversation yet, buddy. Leo pulled back, puzzled. She always eats breakfast here and she always tucks me in. And she smells like cinnamon. Emma laughed through the sudden well of emotion. I guess I do smell like cinnamon. Leo tilted his head. That's a mom smell. So you're my mom now, right? Daniel stepped forward slowly, kneeling beside them. Hey buddy, remember what we talked about? About how love takes time? Leo nodded slowly. Yeah, but she already feels like a mom, even if it's not official. Emma met Daniel's eyes. He didn't speak, but everything he was thinking, every hope, every fear, every quiet promise was there. She looked back at Leo and gently touched his cheek. You know what, Leo? Sometimes families are made by paper, but sometimes they're made by heart, and I think our heart's already decided. Leo beamed. So that's a yes? Emma nodded, smiling through tears. It's a yes. He let out a triumphant squeal and ran in a circle around the kitchen island, shouting, I have a mom. I have a mom. Daniel laughed and reached for Emma's hand. It just made him the happiest kid in the state. Emma leaned into him, her voice soft. I think he just made me the happiest woman in the world. They stood like that for a long time, just holding hands, listening to Leo chant and crash into furniture like a tiny, joyful hurricane. Eventually, Leo came to a stop, panting. Okay. I need pancakes to celebrate. Emma ruffled his curls. Your wish is my command. As Daniel pulled out the pancake mix, Leo disappeared into the living room, already planning a welcome home party complete with streamers and possibly, he said, a ceremonial dinosaur dance. Daniel turned to Emma, one hand resting lightly on the counter, the other stirring batter. You sure about this? Emma stepped beside him and bumped his hip lightly. I've never been more sure. He looked at her for a moment, no speeches, no grand gestures, just quiet awe. Then he leaned in and kissed her, slowly, deeply, like someone finally brave enough to stop apologizing for loving. When they pulled apart, Leo shouted from the next room, no kissing until after the pancakes. It's a rule. They both laughed, and in that small kitchen, under a fridge full of crayons and declarations, something old gave way to something entirely new. A family, not born of tradition or timelines, but of second chances. Of a little boy. Who knew what love looked like? Of a man who stayed. Of a woman who came home. The elevator chimed softly, just like it had every morning for the past 8 years. But today it felt different. Emma stood alone inside, watching the numbers climb slowly. 6, 7, 8. Her reflection in the mirrored panel beside her, somehow softer than it used to be. She didn't know if it was the new lipstick Leo had insisted looked like hero red, or if it was something else. Peace. That's what it felt like. The elevator stopped at the 15th floor. As the doors opened, the familiar hum of the office greeted her, phones ringing, keyboards tapping, quiet chatter drifting from cubicles. Nothing had changed. And yet everything had. She walked through the glass doors with a quiet confidence, no longer carrying invisible armor on her shoulders. Her assistant, Maya, looked up from her desk and smiled. You're early today, Maya, said Emma, smiled. Back. It's a big morning. Maya tilted her head. First day, as Khalid on the foundation project? Emma nodded. And Leo's first day at kindergarten. He's going to charm everyone within a 10-foot radius. You already told. Me, he plans to be class president. They laughed together before Emma made her way into her office. On her desk was a hand-drawn note in crayon. Go save the world, but come home by dinner. Love, Leo. Taped next to it was a tiny T-Rex sticker and a chocolate chip. Granola bar with a bite already taken out of it. Emma laughed softly. Her eyes shimmered, but she didn't cry. Not this time. At exactly 9 a.m., she stepped into the executive conference room, just as she always had. But this time, Daniel stood waiting for her, not just as her CEO, but as her partner. Oh. Was slightly crooked, and she reached up without a word to fix it. He smiled as her fingers brushed his collar. We've come full circle, haven't we? Emma tilted her head. I know, we've drawn a new one. Around the room, team leaders, board members, and stakeholders settled into their seats. The meeting was about the launch of the company's new philanthropic initiative one Daniel and Emma had co-authored together. A mentorship program for single parents re-entering the workforce, built from the very experiences that had nearly broken them both. Daniel opened the meeting, but this time, he didn't take center stage alone. "Before we dive in," he said, gesturing toward Emma, "I'd like to introduce the heart behind this project. Someone who's not only transformed our company's marketing vision, but who reminded me personally and professionally that second chances aren't just possible, they're powerful." He looked at her, and she met his eyes without hesitation. Emma stepped forward, taking a breath, her voice steady and warm. "This program began with a question," she said. "What do we do with the life that happens after the storm? How do we support those still gathering pieces after loss, after starting over, after change they didn't ask for?" She paused, letting the silence settle like roots. "I don't have all the answers," she continued, "but I know this. Everyone deserves to be seen, not for who they used to be, or who they failed to become, but for who they choose to be now. Today, at 9 a.m., with coffee in one hand and courage in the other." A quiet hush settled over the room. Later, there would be applause, would be questions, strategy meetings, donations pledged. But in that moment, it wasn't about metrics, it was about truth. And every heart in that room knew it. That evening, Emma returned home to a kitchen that smelled faintly of pasta and lavender soap. Leo was sitting on the floor, surrounded by construction paper and glitter glue, humming a made-up song about supermoms and dads who do the dishes. Daniel stood at the stove, wearing an apron that said Grill Sergeant, even though there was no grill in sight. "You survived your first board meeting as the soul of the company," said, handing her a glass of wine. She raised it in mock. "Salute. You survived Leo's first school drop-off."
Ow.
Daniel groaned playfully. "He told the principal I had bad breath and needed a nap." Emma laughed. "He's not wrong." Leo looked up. "I'm making decorations for your wedding." Emma nearly choked on her wine. Daniel blinked. "Oh," Leo grinned, holding up a paper chain of hearts. "I asked Mr. Rogers at school if I could be the ring boss." Emma knelt beside him. "Do you mean ring bearer?" "No," Leo said firmly. "Ring boss. It's more powerful." Daniel crouched beside them. "And who exactly said there was a wedding?" Leo pointed at his drawing on the fridge. "He said we were a family. Families have weddings. Duh." And Daniel looked at each other, equal parts, stunned and amused. Emma finally said, "Well, Mr. Ring Boss, that's a big decision." Leo shrugged. "I already made mine." Daniel placed his hand over Emma's. "No rush," he whispered. "I'd say yes." "Any day you ask?" Emma leaned in, kissed him softly, and said, "I'll let you know. But I think I already know the answer." Later that night, after Leo had fallen asleep mid-sentence in a pile of glitter and storybooks, Daniel and Emma sat outside on the porch. Swing. The stars blinked quietly above them, and the world seemed to exhale. "You know," Emma said, leaning into him, "it still amazes me." "What does?" "Out of this us came from a meeting at 9 a.m., Daniel chuckled.
Technically.
"It started before that. But I'll take 9 a.m. as our miracle hour." Emma smiled. "It feels like a resurrection." Daniel kissed her temple.
Oh, more like a homecoming.
They swayed gently in the quiet, the rhythm slow, steady like hearts finally in sync and in. The dark, under a sky filled with quiet grace, Emma whispered the words that had waited years to be born. "I'm glad you came back." Daniel pulled her closer. "I never really left." Asterisk, we'd love to know, where are you watching from? It's always heartwarming to see how far these stories travel. Whether you're tuning in from a quiet town or a big city, your presence here truly means the world to us. If this story touched your heart, helped you believe again in second chances, or simply gave you a few quiet moments of peace, please consider subscribing to the channel. We share stories just like this one, filled with grace, growth, and the kind of love that gently heals what life once broke. And from all of us behind the scenes, thank you for watching.